welcome to a second edition of my conversations with Jared Powell. He's a psychotherapist and trauma healing expert from the US. And Jared and I exchanged sessions a while back. Here he is. Hello. Okay, he's coming in. And today we're going to talk about the session that I facilitated. Let's see. He's connecting. Yay! That's cool. Hi there.
Looks like we're live. Good morning. I guess good afternoon for you.
Yeah,
Nice
it's 3:30. But for everyone who watches this, maybe from Germany or other parts of the world where you are, it's 7:30 a.m., right?
Yeah.
That's really, that's commitment right there. I know what I'm doing at 7:30 in the morning. Inner Twinkle is here. Hello, Inner Twinkle. Yeah, so let's begin. We were going to talk about the second part of our session exchange, which was where I facilitated a parts channeling session for you. And I'm wondering if you wanted to, if there's anything specific that you wanted to speak about or ask me.
Sure. You know, one of the things that really I've reflected repeatedly on our experience. It definitely had an impact. One of the things that we really connected with is just this wholeness within. You know, as you did the connection, the sort of the intuitive channeling thing. There was the moment of confrontation when you said, you know, the reality is that I think this part is whole. That there's this very okay feeling behind it all. You know, there was an impact to that. A lot of the stuff that I grab for in this world is sort of done out of desperation. You know, the part of me that's whole doesn't flinch from, at least the more I've connected with this part of me, it doesn't flinch from the fact that there are ugly things in this world. You know, it's people, like, for example, one of the nonprofits that I'm volunteering with, we're looking at the reality that every single day and at this moment, there are women and girls and young boys being packaged for resale in the sex market and needing healing. And it's ugly and it's painful. There's a part of me that truly longs to shut down the perpetrators, and yet wholeness, the part of me that's whole, that sees this and that sees the broken men I work with from day to day in my day job, you know, it sees these things as, you know, nothing to turn away from, nothing to bow down to or be desperate about, something to notice, to witness, to act upon. And when I connect with the part of me that's more whole, I'm also able to see the pain and the wound of the perpetrator. Not that that's the audience that I'm best at working with, honestly. If I'm playing to my strengths, I'm working with the people that are wounded, that are more able to feel a desire for wellness. And so when I think about that wholeness, and then you sang to me with the intuitive singing, and I was thinking how soothing that was, that sort of accepting feeling that comes with that, you know. And so, I mean, I was just thinking, like, I guess when it comes to the experience of connecting with a person and channeling a part, I'm curious about your experience, like what that's like for you as you sort of go into that sort of open space to experience that.
Yeah, sure. Maybe just for the people watching and who haven't seen like the actual exchange. So we went into this, you asking for a specific part to be channeled, and I kept feeling like that's not it, right? And we spoke about, and went various ways, and eventually I figured actually you were at that point resisting the wholeness, and I ended up channeling the part of you that was whole. And it was really beautiful. And by the way, like, now that I hear you speak, like, I can totally feel it in my heart. It's so cool. But anyway, so what it's like for me, I always describe it as, so I listen to everything that's being said and the desire of that, of you and that part that wants to be channeled. And then my intention is first to become kind of empty. And it's as if my consciousness, the part of me, my energy that is Friederike, my personality, whatever you want to call it, kind of moves out of the way. It's still there, but it's kind of like a witness. It's like a frame through which your consciousness enters. And I'm still there, right? And that's why I always say, as I'm speaking to you, I'm speaking as that part, because I could still speak as me and explain to you, for example, this part feels X, Y, Z. But then that would be an explanation and not the actual part speaking. So basically, what tells me, or how do I know that it's that part speaking? It's very, not impulsive, but um, I like to say like the words come from underneath my throat. So they kind of come from inside my body or kind of like from behind, but they never come from here. You know, if it comes from here, then that will be me. That will be my consciousness. And I really, I mean, is that the answer that you were hoping to get? I mean, when I do it with people in a room, I have to actually set the intention, for example, to stay in the room. And because I will get actually very physical, like sometimes even online, like I always set the intention to stay in that place where I'm staying, because it could be that, for example, the parts within you are so distant that actually I want to go leave the room, go somewhere else. That happened to me once when I was with a client and I hadn't set that intention and I just left. Of course, but that was not very helpful without clarification. So, like I would really feel it in my body, and sometimes I will cry, and sometimes I will be actually angry, or I'll start laughing, or like when I was with you, I'm like, "Hey, it's actually okay. Like I'm here," you know. Um, so it's very, and also even though there's this emotion there, now that I think of it, is behind all of that, there's a sort of stillness. So there's kind of like a white canvas on which that is happening, or at least that's my intention, you know.
I appreciate that.
Does it answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, it does, because one of the things that I was considering is, I mean, we kind of talk back and forth in terms of experience and the value of talking about how the nervous system reacts to this sort of deeper, often unexplainable thing that we still haven't figured out with consciousness. You know what I mean? When I think about that, sort of the default mode network that is often spoken about in, and I might be mixing up my terms right now, but when it's spoken about in neurological terms, when we're in a space where we're centered, when we're present, when we're calm, there's this default network that's sort of this parasympathetically dominant state of being, that when we're there, we're able to still think on a very high level, uh, without being so judgmental or quick to jump on things. We're able to take all the myriad feelings that rise in our bodies, and the things that are coming in so rapidly and moving about so rapidly that we can't consciously track them, and let them converge into some kind of an understanding. It makes it a lot easier to put into words some of the really intense feelings that we may experience, because of the peaceable interplay and collaboration between the parts of the nervous system. And I was just thinking how, when it comes, I mean, it's almost like if I speak in terms of activating this default network, then it's almost like I'm sort of looking at the next step in the process and saying, yeah, do that next step in the process without doing the first step. The first step happens rapidly. When a person undertakes, like you're saying, to enter that clear space and let the conscious identity sit as a witness on the periphery,
Yeah.
you know, then we're already making a call really rapidly to enter into that sort of default mode, where we
Mm.
can really start to process more rapidly what's happening inside of us, to be
Yeah.
intuitive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Now
if
that you're
anything,
saying, yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just saying, if anything, your explanation and of what you experience as you go inside, it just helps me see sort of like, yeah, that's what it is. Where that's one of the ways of compassion activating that state.
Yeah.
Compassion opening us up to that state, and there's a whole bunch of chemical interactions that go with it. you know, and a lot of them are very helpful because they help us feel the rewards of connecting with another human. They help us then take that uh, goodwill and that kindness into our next interactions.
Mm. I love that word. I'm just at the moment kind of addicted to books by Greg Braden. Are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not.
I really recommend. He's a bridge builder between spirituality and science, and he goes about asking a lot of like monks and not saints. What's the word? Anyway, and goes about asking them, how do you pray, or things like what is the stuff that keeps us all that connected, that keeps the world together. And one of the things he kept hearing was compassion. Like some of the oldest monks in like the most remote places, they will go say, it's compassion. When you feel compassion, you are connected. You're not able to intentionally hurt something that you feel with. You know, if I feel you, then why would I hurt you intentionally? Anyhow, one of the things that I noticed as I rewatched that session today was, for those of you who are going to watch it, there are a lot of things that you and I did, or you did specifically, kind of automatically because you're so familiar with that work, that maybe if I'd worked with someone who wasn't that familiar with it, I would have had to ask. Like, for example, um, like first of all, that awareness of there's an observer and there are different parts within me. Like the awareness of I'm describing that which is happening within me, which is already like two entities. So I'm sad and I know that I'm sad. So there's a part of me that's sad, right?
Right.
And you were also then describing like that part of you that you first you said it was like darkness. You were describing it like with a color. And then without me even asking you, we were saying, oh, if I had to describe it, it would look like this and this person in that scenario. And I think maybe for the people who are not so familiar with it, that's kind of a very intuitive process. And we're using all our senses, like some people would be very visual and they would say, oh, it's this old lady smoking a cigarette looking out the window. And someone else would be like, this feels warm, but also like there's a cold wind, like a breeze. Or someone else would say, oh, this is purple with gray in it, Um, yeah. Is there something that you would like to like add to that? Because I was noting you were doing this automatically. I hadn't even asked for it. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if someone who watches this is actually getting what's happening there with between us.
It's very difficult to track on video for a person to
Mm.
actually feel a lot of what's happening between, like what was happening between us. What they would need to do is probably enter their own default mode network space, be calm, be at peace, be intuitive, be ready, because this stuff happens so rapidly. It surprised me when I started having to do psychotherapy over video chat because of the pandemic,
Mm.
how um, and even before then, I'd done a little bit of coaching and therapy over video chat here and there, and sometimes
Mm.
over phone when there just had to, there was a crisis over the phone.
Mm.
And I remember being surprised at how the nuances in voice and in the bit of visual we get on these channels uh, could generate such an intense experience inside if I was open to it. And
Mhm.
so a person would have to be in that state to track what was going on, to
Mhm.
track that there was something profound, rapid, and back and forth happening between us. I immediately went into this visual mode and started seeing things, that even though when looking back at it, I watched the video of our interactions again, and I thought, oh gosh, if I were to just hear that as an outsider, I would not be able to feel the intense peace and connection and okayness of that
Mm-hmm.
image,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, it was this pleasant parasympathetic nervous system activation,
Mm-hmm.
that so that I could feel some of the and sort of more intense, sympathetic little upticks and energetic
Mm-hmm.
movements without being increasingly upset. If anything, being able to feel the neural discharge going through my body and feeling more at peace, more
Mm-hmm.
alive, more like the energy is reclaimed within my
Mm-hmm.
system.
How would you say that someone could act like someone who was maybe not that experienced but who's curious could access that default state or this kind of quiet observer mind?
The the answer is always start with the senses. Um, in the United States, a lot of times the acronym WTF stands for something that's not very, nice, like something that's upsetting. You say WTF, that's really upsetting, but I'll say the answer is WTF to get my Americans laughing. It's like WTF,
Mhm.
where's the feeling, instead of what WTF
Oh,
stands for in
yeah,
their
yeah,
language.
yeah.
Yeah, where's the feeling? And it's just, for some people, starting with the senses is a very turbulent experience. For example, worked with a fellow who experienced some things that a human should never experience as a child, and a lot of invalidation on top of the pain and the abuse that he experienced. And for him, much of what he did in life was to disembody himself. So a bit of re-embodiment was very turbulent, and often I'll see that in like when I was doing psychiatric hospital work. A bit of re-embodiment is a very harsh experience for certain people who have had to disembody for much of their lives. And so you can start with the senses, but as you touch into the senses, as there's a rise of energy and something novel and strange comes up in your body, don't be afraid of it. Recognize that this is built up, pent up stress and survival energy that has not been released, that has not been discharged. And if you have to slow things down and step back a bit, be a good dance partner with your nervous system. Touch in and then let yourself touch out. Touch in and then
Mm-hmm.
let yourself touch out. And soon enough, the activation and deactivation cycles will start to generate things like uh, gentle tingles that for some people feel good, for other people are scary,
Mm-hmm.
or shivers and shakes, or for some people, I even see intense heat and sweating. Recognize this rather than shutting it down. As long as you can tolerate it and it doesn't leave you emotionally unhinged, let the
Mm-hmm.
odd and novel feelings rise in the body, curiously,
Mm-hmm.
wondering where they're going to go next, knowing, believing, having faith in the idea that your nervous system is designed to regain dynamic equilibrium, regain balance,
Mm-hmm.
regain the wholeness that sits behind and rests within it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot I don't understand about the whatever sits beyond our bodies and our nervous systems. But whatever spiritual forces or creative forces have led to this complex being that we are, that sits around and beneath and within us,
Mm-hmm.
it tends toward balance.
Mm. So
And
what
for
I'm
anything,
hearing
yeah,
also is like try to let those things come up without assigning meaning to it.
well said,
Mm.
well said. Because really, if you start with the senses, it's one thing to say to start with something outside of us, and that can be really useful and helpful. To be observing things outside of us, because it activates parts of us that help us reference ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you turn attention to the senses in the process, uh, you'll be able to get more out of it. I still remember being a therapist in training, and my supervisor told me, and it was when I was first in graduate school. It was, gosh, that was a long time ago, before I did the lawyer thing and went back to the therapy field.
Time
But I
doesn't
remember
exist.
she told me, yeah, she she said, you need to get more in your guts. You're really not connecting with this guy. She would watch my video with the therapy session, and I remember thinking, gosh, I don't know how to get into my guts, and if I do, I wonder if the stuff in my guts is the kind of stuff that would be in her guts. Because what if my guts don't have what it takes? But what I didn't realize is that the process of getting into one's guts when they're a very heady person, like like I was and I am, you know, is you turn attention into the senses. You
Mm-hmm.
WTF? Where's the feeling? Stay with
Mm-hmm.
it. Let the weirdness come up, and like you said, don't assign meaning to it.
Yeah.
Be curious enough to watch it, to believe that it's going somewhere good, and then as your body shivers and shakes and heats and sometimes feels nausea and then releases and feels ecstasy, recognize that you are designed to be whole.
Mm. That is so beautiful. I love it. Yeah, and I wanted to point out also for like everyone who does healing work, either as a client or as like a therapist or healer coach, whatever. I don't know when this concept of wholeness came up for me, but I had noticed within the last year or so this resistance within myself to do shadow work and to think in parts. And I think like a year ago or so was the first time that I noticed it in a healer friend of mine who is amazing at what she does, absolutely amazing. And then, but we all have issues. So she was, talking to me about something that was upsetting her, and one part of her this, and another part that, and the next part this. And all of a sudden, I'm like, you know what? Stop. Just stop it. Like, can you for a moment think of yourself as you in like as one person? Because yeah, it's true we have these parts, but there's still like if you look at me, you see one me usually. If you don't have any kind of fancy abilities, you're not going to see like triple me or quadruple me. So like think of yourself as like one person and ask your body, or ask your heart. And then I think at that moment I started to understand that it's kind of like a pitfall of that whole shadow work, which it's great, like if you need it, do it because it's amazing. But there comes a point in time where, it can kind of flip around, and then you start thinking in terms of like parts, and I have something to heal and I'm never really done. At any moment that life comes up with a challenge for you. And I started seeing how this was not healthy, because then people were like, I just feel like it's not healthy to keep thinking of yourself as fractured or split into a million parts if you don't at the same time, take a deep breath and are like, okay, but I'm still me, I'm still whole, and there's a wholeness that connects all of these parts. There's no parts without wholeness, and there's no wholeness without parts. So like I just want to say that for everyone who's like a therapist or who's doing this kind of thing, like like that wholeness is always there. Like that was important to me. And also I had a moment a few weeks ago. I was sitting on the train, I was really exhausted, and I remember in our session I told you like there's juice in the messiness of life, right?
Jeez.
And it's true. Like how can we say like life is only worth living in the good moments? It's a judgment. It's not true. And I was sitting there on that train, I was really exhausted, but then at this same moment I'm like, you know what, but I feel great. I feel alive. you know I'm like, damn, I feel like a little bit through all that healing work and through all that focusing on getting people out of pain. um I started assigning meaning to any kind of discomfort. Like any kind of discomfort is not good. And that's also not true, right?
Right. Right. I mean, when I think about a lot of the work I've done with others, it really helped me understand that just like with everybody I work with, there's a part of me that longs for a wholeness of experience, that
Mm-hmm.
longs for everything that is, so
Yeah.
that when in the messiness, like I love how you put that, there's juice in the messiness, it's like that to actually experience the juice, to take in the juice of that. There has to be a comprehension and a loving is not like the right word for my language, I don't think, but sort of being able to look non-hatefully,
Mm.
at the messiness, to have a hope born of wholeness, that
Mm.
that looks at the messiness, comprehends the messiness, comprehends the things that aren't going right, or that I've judged as not going right,
Mm-hmm.
and to we use the word acceptance a lot in the U.S. To accept things, but it
Yeah.
seems so trite, because a lot of times we will say, oh, just accept it, but to just accept it is really a profound thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's almost a combination of enjoy it,
Mm.
even though part of you screams at it,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
embrace
Yeah.
it.
And when I hear people say that, just accept it, most of the time what I hear is just swallow it.
Yeah,
You
swallow
know?
it, suppress it.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I don't know how it is throughout most of the world because I admit ignorance on a lot of it, but in the post-industrial United States, there long has been an attitude of, we have this sort of work ethic, this Judeo-Christian work ethic, which is important, but it got coupled inappropriately with this idea of, oh, if you have feelings and they're contrary to productivity, put your game
Oh
face
my
on,
God.
stuff the feelings, and get to work. And if you can't handle the runoff of feelings, well, do something to shut them down. A lot of people would drink them down. A lot of people would distract them away, live, or sort of do other things to suppress. Right.
I think Germany
Uh,
is the
and
worst place for this.
so you
We're
see
the
this, and so this is in Germany too.
we're the worst. Or we could say we're the best at that. Well, because we
Best.
think about it, two world wars, and second one, everyone kind of just pulled their shit together and rebuilt a country within a few years. But all that trauma is unprocessed, and it's, this kind of coldness and harshness. It's getting better now. I feel like because it was so bad, I think there's a lot of awareness coming in for a desire, a need for like softness, and allowing emotions. I see that a lot. However, um, there's a lot of negligence when it comes to emotions here, and a lot of suppressed emotions. Yeah.
So really, I mean, here's to heralding in a sort of a renaissance of wellness and emotional wholeness. I mean,
Hmm.
we're we're sitting here at the cusp of it,
Yeah.
seeing this rise around us. And
Hmm.
when you think about, I mean, do we have a role in this? Do we have a role in the sort of and yeah, we do. Everybody has a role in this.
Yeah.
It's the emotional awareness, the consciousness, the consciousness of how compassion is often one of the overarching things that can make it better,
Hmm.
that can help us enjoy the juice and the messiness.
Hmm. And also, I just had this. I was thinking of a funny encounter that I had like 10 days ago or so. I was on a job, it was an acting job actually. And my colleague, he was male, around 40-ish, I would say. And I was telling him, yeah, like I'm a coach and a healer as well, and I work with emotions. And it was interesting because he was like, oh, so you do the shadow child thing and the sun child. That's what people like to say here, like kind of in Germany. There's the shadow child and the sun child. And I'm like, yeah, like I don't use that kind of terminology usually, but yeah, I also work with, I do inner child work. And so we kind of tiptoed around that subject and spoke about meditation. And he's like, yeah, I have this friend. She always tells me, like, hey, but you have to feel your emotions. And so then I go and I sit there and I'm like, I'm going to feel my emotions now. But then, like, as soon as I start doing this, I have this like mind chatter and like so many thoughts, and I'm a rational male and all that. And um, because we were talking about the this default mode and the observer self in the beginning, and I know I have a colleague here on Instagram who asked me, like, how do I do these things? Like, some people have difficulty getting into their emotion. I feel like also validating that part of you, that rational mind, that mind chatter, that kind of like I'm the reasonable, rational, maybe male person, um, that it served you, like acknowledge it. Like that's also it's playing a role. I told him like, look, um, if it was dangerous for you, as a child to feel emotions, especially you being a guy, then that part served you well. And I think like often when we try to like, now we feel things, right? We go on a mission to feel things. Like we try to like bulldoze that other part that is like, wait, like, wait, danger zone, like, wait. Um, and that needs acknowledgement as well. And it, like, yeah, it can be there. Like, it's great. Like, you can tell this part, like, look, if you see like a red flag somewhere, we're touching upon something we're not meant to touch, then please intervene, And I think that's important, like, that we don't have to, with all that, like, feel things. I feel like the most important thing is that awareness and that presence that's behind it, that can also get behind the ratio if you want. I don't know how you
Yeah,
feel about that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, really, I mean, like your discussion with him is moving because I mean, recognizing that no matter how much strength and fortitude and other things that are considered very masculine that a guy has to acquire in learning how to get and take care of things and help the way that men are supposed to help. Um, there are parts that are very tender that are loaded with survival energy
Mm,
that like you think that's a little too much. Let me know. If we're touching on something that's too tender, let me know
mm,
because as soon as they I mean, being on a mission to feel it, it does take that understanding. I think that I'm on a mission to experience the hurt, trapped, wounded energy in this part of me.
mhm,
And sometimes it's kind of dark, and really kind of
mhm,
painful. Even if you look back and think, oh, I had a fine childhood, I had good parents. In my case, I had parents who loved me very much and took very good
mhm.
care of me, which was what they were very kind to me. And yet, even with a very good upbringing, by society's standards, there are still wounds
Yep.
because we're human,
Yeah.
and being able to touch into the sort of the dark and painful parts of being human.
Yeah.
There's a lot of survival energy that gets released,
Yeah. Of
and a lot of
course.
back
Yeah.
and forth. I mean, for a lot of people, when it comes to, there's sort of an artificial way that there's techniques and gimmicks that we use in the therapy world to try to help people um, uh, connect with the whole parts of them so that they can properly face these. I love how you use the analogy of being on a mission to feel, being on a mission to connect with these parts of us. Like for example, I might have somebody uh, you talk about something that makes them feel good, or somebody who was uplifting, nurturing, helpful to them, and as they experience the sensations in their body that come when they think about this nurturing person, this powerful protector, this peaceable place, this fantasy that moves them, you know
Mhm.
then what I have them do is find the feeling in the body. A lot of times their eyes will move to a certain place, so I'll use the brain spotting methodology and have them just hold their midbrain orienting response by keeping their eyes there, and then maybe have them do some bilateral stimulation or something,
Mhm.
some kind of, they're moving, they're shaking, they're rocking, they're tipping, to just basically enhance the neural connections, to
Mhm.
integrate the resource state. And then what happens is once I have them integrating several resource states or several resource, ideas and feelings and that kind of
Mhm.
thing, then while they're in that wonderfully, powerfully resourced state, then I'll say, okay, so are you ready to now talk to that part of you that hurts? Are you ready to now look at this memory that hurts? Are you ready to now work on this thing? And so they have all this. Sometimes they'll have this pantheon of backup. They'll have several, their protector, their nurturer, their peaceable place, their whatever. And then I'll say, okay, now we've artificially sort of enhanced the connection with all of these things, so they're at the ready.
Mhm.
Now let's go ahead and look at this painful thing, and then surrounded by love and nurturance, which is really already a part of them, but they just weren't able to access it.
Yeah.
Um, then they look at it, and there's this all the fireworks that happen inside their bodies are well contained. They're able
Mhm.
they're expanded enough inside.
Yeah.
Peter Levine used the word expansion. They're expanded inside. The container is expanded.
Yeah.
Is how he put it.
Mhm.
And then they start to experience deep release. The back and forth fasciculations are tolerable. The heat is tolerable, and a lot of times they find that the parts that were so scary within them are no longer so fearsome. They're
Mhm.
just hurt kids, or sometimes the really really visual people will have images like the image went from sharp to fluffy. It went
Yeah.
um, from angry to sad.
Mhm.
you know it and it's a lot easier to comfort a sad part than to hug an angry bully
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
wants to
Yeah.
kill.
Of
you know
course. And I feel like that's important. And coming back to like how we started out, like speaking about like the wholeness that's behind everything, I've kind of even made that integrated that into a lot of sessions that I'm facilitating, because like you said, like it helps when you have this team of like supporters around you when you go into something. I feel like it helps a lot going on a healing journey from a perspective, or at least the hint of a perspective of I'm already whole, and let's see what's in there to discover, so that maybe I see myself not as more whole, but as, like I like to say, like we're like a mosaic, and all of these little parts and fractures are a part of the mosaic. And maybe one of those little tiles is flipped. So we kind of look at it and turn it around, and then, maybe we've healed the unhealthy pattern, but instead now we have a healthy need, or a healthy kind of desire to show up in the world as, I don't know, someone like a pink ballerina who, I don't know, something, but it's all, these fractures are facets of our personality. And I feel like it changes a lot thinking of like having that image of the mosaic and of the I'm already whole, or I can try to believe that I'm already whole if I'm not yet there, and diving into something rather than I need to fix myself and I need to heal in order for me to feel deserving or lovable or whatever. Yeah. By the way, I can see that there's some people online here with us. If you guys want to say hi or ask a question before we close this, then feel free to ask. Yeah, there's just my little philosophizing here.
The image of the mosaic definitely it moves me, that there's already this wholeness, and
Mm-hmm.
the idea of the flipped tile. I mean, that's I love that. It's just like, yeah, there's parts that have not been turned over. We can't see their full color. We can't see how they
Yeah,
contribute. I mean,
but
because a
they
lot
are
of times
there,
we,
you know?
yeah, the scariest bully within a person is often a scared kid. When you get down to it, it's a tender part, or it's protecting a tender part,
Mm-hmm.
or trying to shove you away so you can't hurt the tender part, or trying to shut down the tender part because it's like, oh, that part's just going to mess us up. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you think about the defensive pieces within us, how they're they're often they're just there for a loving purpose. The suicidal parts, for some folks, it's like you would be willing to give up your life and shut everything down all around you, just to give relief to this person. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
does it feel this like the flipped tile idea?
Yeah,
It's like something good within.
yeah,
We can see the color. They take their childlike capacities with them. The creativity, the joy,
yeah,
the things that children can bring. When you when you flip the tile over, you see the color.
yeah,
Whether it's juice in the messiness or color in the mosaic.
yeah,
It's like I love the
yeah.
analogies that you use.
Yeah, because it's sometimes people come to me and they of course they're not consciously aware of it, but I make them aware that what they're trying to do is to heal from a belief, and not a belief, to heal from a need that's actually healthy. Because for some reason it doesn't fit into their lifestyle, it doesn't fit into their relationship. But I'm like, look, if there's an unhealthy expression of that need, like a clinginess or whatever, that we can probably heal and look at. But I cannot heal you from your healthy need of uh, a stable bond, for example. And I think that's important. Like, we don't want to get rid of those parts. Like you said, like
Yeah,
then there's the creativity. Then there's the person who loves cooking, or the person who loves drawing, or the person who loves climbing mountains. I don't know. Um,
yeah. It's
like we
such a
don't want to.
difficult balance
Yeah.
because for so many, it's like starting to tap into desire and longing turns into a sudden, like unconscious, the survival instincts kick on so strong. People will go to addiction related things, sex addiction, substance addiction, relationship addiction, or
Hmm.
they'll go into this, like for people that have experienced horrific trauma, they'll go into, they'll either split or just go into a more unconscious sort of part of themselves,
Hmm.
where it's, and so being able to being able to keep the process tolerable is a lot of where a lot of the coach and therapist gimmicks come into play. Is like,
Mm,
what can we do to make it tolerable so they can feel those dependency longings that are so natural, like you pointed out. Like,
mhm.
there's nothing wrong with longing for connection.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with longing for relief or longing for pleasure or any of those things. These
yeah,
are all important parts of us.
yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm looking at the time. I think we're already well at 45 minutes. So maybe we'll wrap it up. But I enjoyed this a lot. Maybe we can even continue this at some point in some shape or form.
Sure.
We'll see. Um, for everyone who's watching or who will watch, thank you for being with us. Someone just came. You will find this live on my IGTV, and the sessions that we exchanged are on my YouTube channel. And yeah, feel free to give us, each of us, feedback or ask questions. We're super happy to answer. And yeah, is there anything that I didn't ask or that you feel like sharing now?
No, I think that covers it. It was a pleasure talking with you again, Friederike.
You too. Thank you so much. I wish you a beautiful day, beautiful morning. And yeah, we'll just be in touch.
All right, bye bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone.